But for the children to, for those that they love, that they've been around, to now all of a sudden be told you can't say this, you can't say that, and you won't be, you know, with these, that, or the other. What is the impact, for the most part, for these children? I know it depends upon, you know, their age groups and their level of maturity too, I would think, as well. But also the love they have for one or the other of the parents, and all that. All of that has an impact, I'm sure. It's just like even when parents get divorced, you never know sometimes the impact on the children until they're older, when they can share it. But what are some of the things that you guys have seen from that the children have had to deal with?
Well, a child coming out of domestic violence household may feel, you know, again, an age and gender can really affect this. They may come into shelter and they may be identifying strongly with the parent that they left. They may not consider mom the authority, because mom never had the authority in the household. So when you bring them into shelter and mom is now the authority, and we tell them you have to, you know, your mom's in charge, that can be a very hard concept. You can see a lot of acting out. You can see a really violent child. You can see a lot of kids that blame themselves. And as boys get older, they may step in and try to defend mom. And we see people go, now I haven't personally, but we read about young men who are going to jail for doing this. So a lot of guilt and responsibility, feelings of that, you know, what did I do? It's enough people to change schools, to get out of the area you know, and to come somewhere with your mom who's very stressed and doesn't know what's next, and maybe the only thing everything she's known, she's left behind, everything you know has been left behind, and it's a brand new place and you're living with a bunch of people you don't know. That's very, very stressful. But on the other side of that, sometimes we will see children come into shelter and suddenly make dramatic progress in developmental milestones. That mom wasn't even aware the child could do that because of the stress and even the physical reality of where they've been living. You know, maybe if a child running around being a 2-year-old makes dad angry when he gets home, you keep that child quiet. You keep that child in the playpen, and that child is not going to develop the motor and related skills that they need to. So then you bring them somewhere else where they can do those things. And so we see that as well. We see children that are really thriving because they're now being offered a more peaceful environment. So that there's the bad and there's the good. But the kids do definitely get affected by the violence. You know, even if you tell yourself that they never saw it or they were never a direct victim themselves, they know what's happening, and it is affecting them. So definitely.
And I was thinking before you talked about the child who was not able to be a child, and now all of a sudden they feel this freedom to do so. I was thinking that these children probably, though, grow up really fast, and some of them really set aside or don't experience a true childhood as a regular child in a, you know, and really it's not the average family anymore, that you have the father and the mother who are with the children, you know, and you've got the 2.5 child or whatever it is, that average that used to be. Yes, now you've got mainly, for the most part, single parent households.
Yes, many single parent households, and you know the children do come in, a lot of them feeling like they are responsible, and we have a lot of, you know, not just in our shelter, but in general in a lot of society, we see a lot of women especially who consider their children their best friends, and they tell them all sorts of things that maybe at that age they shouldn't be hearing, and you know they take on a bond of a peer as opposed to their child. With teens especially, sometimes we get them into shelter and they have pretty much been raising themselves. They've been getting themselves up in the morning, getting themselves to school, take responsibility for their siblings, and they may have the opinion at this point that mom hasn't been doing such a great job, and they can do it. And they They don't want to hear from us, mom's in charge. They don't want mom to suddenly take on the role of being in charge when they've been doing just fine, thank you very much. So we don't get as many teens as we do younger children in shelter, but it's very stressful. If they've reached that age, they've grown up in it, starting to date, they're starting to form their own opinions about male-female relationships.
Now, for those family members, friends, etc., that think there may be something going on, or they don't want to butt in, but they care about this person and they really want to help them, what should they do if they suspect? Because sometimes we suspect and we don't really know for sure, but we suspect and we just want to kind of check and make sure that our friend's okay, or if they're not, to share with them something that we think they should do. But what should those family members or friends or loved ones do if they suspect something? And and sometimes it's an employer.
Yes.
It's an employee and an employer, what do we do? Because we've had instances too where someone's spouse has actually come into the workplace and there are murders that go on that impact other people in addition to that person. So, there's quite a variety of scenarios there that to deal with, but what should they do?
Well, we all want to help, and we get a lot of those calls as well on our hotline from people who want to help. It would be really important that the victim know that you're there for them and that you're not judging, that you don't treat them like they're stupid or like they're incapable of making a good decision. You don't know the reasons they may be staying in that relationship. They may have some very solid safety reasons that they feel it isn't safe yet to leave, and you don't know that. So if you're talking to the person, a real basic question, if it's safe to ask, and don't ask it around anybody else, that's going to be less likely to disclose. A safer question would be, are you safe at home? Is there anyone hurting you? Real basic question. Is there somewhere, do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight if you think that they've left? Do you need somewhere to go? And that somewhere may not be your auntie's couch. That might not be safe if he knows where she lives. It might be my shelter. So you can let them know that you're there for them. Let them know that you're there for them even if they don't leave right then. We see a lot of time, the statistic now is a female will return to the same abusive partner, never mind going from abusive to abusive relationship, the same abusive partner 8 or 9 times before they stay gone. So if it's 8 or 9 times, and times 5, you get frustrated and say, well, don't call me anymore. I'm tired of rescuing you. You shut that door. And I'm not saying that you don't have the right to do that, because it may be endangering your own family welfare. But what I'm saying is, if you want to continue to be there for the person, the victim needs to know that you are there for them, even if they stay in it or return to that relationship. That is a realistic dynamic of domestic violence relationships. And so we don't say you can't come back to the shelter because you've been here before. That's inhumane and unrealistic. So let them know your door remains open. Let them know about our services. And let them know you're not there judging them, that it's not their fault. Because one of the reasons I don't like the term enabling, besides the fact that it's a substance abuse term, is somebody makes a decision to hit or not, and that's not the victim's choice. We're not allowing them to hit us. We may be staying in that relationship because they said to us, if you leave me, I am going to take the kids and you'll never see them again. And the reality is, if they're granted unsupervised visitation, or as we've seen recently with that tragic case, the Powell family, supervised visitation, you may not see your kids again. So am I going to tell a mom that she should definitely leave and take the chance every other weekend and holiday that she's never going to see her kids again? I'm not in her shoes. I'm not going to judge her for that. So if you want to be there, let her know about her services, let her know that you're there for her, and help her not feel judged, or him. We're using the gender a lot because statistically that's who we get a lot more calls from and who we admit to the shelter more often. But men, we're there for you as well. Domestic violence is not just a domestic issue. As you mentioned, it affects the workplace, the safety of everybody around you. It's not just a women's issue, it affects men as well, not just as victims. But if you're the batterer, your life is affected by that as well. Our sons are male, raised in an abusive home, so it's a human issue, and it affects everybody.
And you were sharing with me too, because when we think of domestic violence, we think of spousal relationships. But you were saying there are other types of relationships that fall under that as well.
Spousal or intimate partner. It's not just boyfriend, girlfriend, or man on woman or spouse. It can be an adult child against a parent. And recently our county saw that as well in the paper. An adult child that maybe is the caretaker of an elderly parent. It could be sisters living in the same place that become violent against one another. It could be, and you know, with the economy, we have a lot of families that are having people move back in, not by their own choice and under very stressful circumstances. So the volatility of the situations has gone up. So domestic doesn't mean you're in the same household. So yes, domestic violence technically is people living in the same household, but we're not just there for an intimate partner or marital abuser and victim relationships. You may be fleeing a parent, an abusive parent. You may be fleeing an abusive sister that you've been sharing housing with. And the question really is, are you a victim and are they going to be looking for you? So you need to get out.
If you would, give the contact information again for individuals so they can know how they can contact the Domestic Abuse Council, you know, phone numbers and website and the like, even to get more information. And then we'll get to the next level.
Okay. The hotline locally is 255-2102. That is a 24-hour hotline. The 800 number is 1-800-500-1119. That's 1-800-500-1119. And that's free. So if you call that anywhere in Florida, that will put you to whatever shelter is in the area you're calling from.
And if they wanted, is there a website?
Yes, www.domesticabusecouncil.com, and that's council, C-O-U-N-C-I-L. And that has all of our information there as well. It will not have our location. Our location is confidential and won't be given out.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I got a minute or so left, but I do want to talk about funding and let people know some really kind of negative impacts you guys have had in regards to funding because you've had to do some cutbacks. And when that happens, given as you mentioned, the volatility of this whole issue and what has been going on, and even law enforcement would tell you that when it comes to assaults and the like as related to this, that is one area in terms of law enforcement where the crime stats have gone up over the past couple of years or so. So this is an important issue, and it is an issue that deserves not only servicing and meeting the needs of those who find themselves in this situation, but it's also an area that impacts not just, as we've mentioned, the abuser and the victim, but also the family contact and sometimes the workplace and then the community as well. So there's a safety issue and security issue for all of us. But in terms of legislation, in terms of funding, what is it that has happened in the past year or so that has impacted Domestic Abuse Council and the ancillary programs that are tied to that?
Well, we get federal as well as state and county funding, and we all know the county has been having a hard time. We did have a schools program that went into the schools, a person, dedicated staff member that was presenting at various levels, anti-bullying, teen dating violence, depending on the age. That program was eliminated. We still have a primary prevention program, which is just going into two different classes, so twice a year now as opposed to all year. And so we were very sad to lose that program. It was a great program. The need is certainly there.
The need is certain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know,
we all can see that.
The Battered Women's Movement really is looking at preventing at this point as much as anything. The Domestic Violence Trust Fund is where we get some of our funding, and that's based on marriage and divorce fees in these times. Both of those things occur less often, meaning less money. And as you know, as all the belts tighten, that all trickles down to us as well. And as that happens, we simultaneously have a greater need. So I was just looking at my statistics for the past year for shelter admissions, and we went from 2009-10 from 278 individuals admitted, now that's children and adults, to 326 in the 10-11 year. And that's, you know, and as people come in, they have fewer resources, as all the area resources are defunded or have less funding, less food pantry, less food stamps, whatever is out there that gets cut